I can just adapt it to not having those. All right.
I'm always busy.
Cool. All right. Well, welcome, and thanks, Gavin, for inviting me to do this. It's fun to be in Merrill. I haven't been in Merrill yet in a classroom, and I hadn't actually been in since they had finished the entryway. Right, the entryway had been closed off last time I was here. So this is always a good excuse to come in, check out some new spaces on campus. So if you don't know me, I'm Professor Ingerson, Dr. Ingerson. I teach over on the JSU North Campus, also known as Stone Center, or JSU Piedmont Campus, I guess, is what we sometimes make a joke of. Any of you ever taken classes over in Stone? Mm-hmm. Yeah, most everybody. So I'm up on the third floor there, and so Gavin reached out and asked me if I would facilitate these sort of combined sessions. And yeah, I said I would be happy to. So I guess my question is, I want to know a little bit more about y'all, right? He was like, there'll be about 15 people here. You're in Sigma Nu. This I know. That's right. What else? Tell me more. Who are you? A couple faces I recognize. A lot of you I don't. So tell me who you are, and are you all like a certain year, or how? Like, who is this group of Sigma Nu brothers?
Well, I'm Gavin Terrell.
All right.
I'm a third year. I just switched my major to biology recently, so hopefully I can still graduate on time.
Cool.
And then Southerners, so we just came for practice.
All right. Nice. Chris, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm Chris. Chris Bravo. This is my fourth year. And I've never changed my major, but I've had fun these past 4 years. It's kind of going to be weird next year not having this as a second home, I guess.
Okay. Cool.
I'm Maui.
No.
I'm a freshman, so I'm technically a candidate.
Okay.
And my major is ecology, and it's pretty cool here.
Okay. Nice. Are you from the area? No.
Not at all.
Where are you from?
I was born in Philly.
Born in Philly, and you made your way to Jacksonville, Alabama.
I didn't know this place existed until February.
Wow. All right. Cool. All right. You're next. I thought you were getting up and running away because you didn't want to be the next one to introduce yourself.
Some salt there.
Oh, hey. I know you too. My goodness.
So my name is Ray. I'm a senior, major in emergency management, minor in military science. I'm also the chaplain of the fraternity, and I'm an ROTC cadet.
Cool. Nice to meet you. Hi, Addison. How are you?
Hey, Dr. Ingerson.
We're just doing quick introductions. Yes,
Got
I know
you.
you. You're in my class. You're about to graduate. I'm just the only thing standing between you and graduation.
Yes.
Right? Oh, it's such a powerful feeling, right?
Evan.
Hey, Evan.
I am second year, and my major is pre-health biology.
Pre-health biology. Cool. I didn't catch the cameraman.
Yeah, I'm Ryan.
Yeah.
I'm a business management major.
Okay.
And I'm the treasurer of the fraternity.
All right.
So anyway,
So you take a lot of classes in here.
yeah, I just switched it from film.
Okay.
Like I'm a film minor now,
Okay.
so I'm kind of getting started with it.
Cool.
I'm Carson. I'm a sophomore, and I'm a sports management major.
All right.
I'm Parker. I'm a junior, and I'm a communications major.
My name is Carlos Gonzalez. I'm the president of this fraternity, and I'm a finance major.
Cool.
My name is Tony. I'm a third year. I was a music major, but now I'm just integrated studies or business and stuff.
Okay. Cool. All right. So the two sessions, right? One is really, the first one is sort of thinking about leadership. What is leadership? What are the traits and habits and different kinds of things that leaders possess? The second part, well, I'm going to give you a little break in the middle too, so if you need to go to the bathroom or something like that, right? We're cramming two sessions together. And the second session is really like a visioning activity. And so to me, that speaks to like a group of you, probably not the folks who are seniors, but like a group of you like starting this work and then going to a retreat. I think that's essentially what the curriculum calls for. And to sort of think about what is the vision that you want to set forth for the organization, the chapter in this case, right? And really talking through that and sort of setting something in motion. We'll definitely do the first part. I'll try to do the second part to the extent that that's useful for all of you, right? So the very first thing is I put up this quote This is in the manual, right? This is sort of a quote to get us thinking about what leadership is, what like ethical leadership looks like, right? The measure of a man's character is what he would do if he knew he would never be found out. What do you make of that?
A lot of people kind of drop their walls when they're behind closed doors, and it just shows your true colors.
Okay, so the implication or the suggestion is maybe the way that we act in public isn't always the way that we act in other aspects of life. All right, what else? What other kinds of impressions? None?
Basically said what I would take.
All right.
I just have the best ideas in the room, obviously.
Well,
Yeah,
okay.
I think
Probably the only
like
reason.
what I just get from it is like kind of like what he was saying, like who you act behind, like when nobody else is seeing you is really who you are as
Okay.
a character. Like you can't really, to me, it's kind of saying like you can't have that poker face the whole time.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, right? Like this is essentially how, at least for Thomas Macaulay. Do you know who Thomas Macaulay was? No, I know. I had to do some digging too. He was a British Secretary of War, a politician, a writer from the 19th century, right? So when he says the measure of a man's character, he's definitely thinking along the lines of a man, right? This is sort of thinking about this, but right. So this is what he's trying to suggest: is like, we need to be true to our principles. We need to live up to the kinds of things that we talk about, that we say that we're going to do. And so that is one of the things that leaders, right, do. The first thing that I want to do, this is a super low-tech presentation. I'm going to put a couple quotes up here. Beyond that, that's about all we're going to use this for. So one of the things I want to brainstorm, and I'll actually use this sheet to brainstorm a little bit, is I want us to think about the...
Are you trying to get it to like?
I'm trying to get it where I can see it on the screen here.
Like both of them? Because you probably have to change it on that little square thing in the middle.
Yeah, I see the square thing. Let's see. Lectern laptop, PC extended, PC primary.
Because see on one each, they should both, either one say primary and then one say extended on the.
Yeah, so I had the extended, that was the one that was on, showing, and then... All right. This is too fancy. In Stone Center, we live in the 1950s.
Extended, so you want to see.
So I just want to see this document that I have up here. See this document that's here? So I can see that the document is open. And I want to see that on the screen so that I can actually type something in. And if we can't get it to work, we can do it the really old-fashioned way, which is like markers and a board. I thought I had it, and I touched something.
There you go.
All right, cool. We've got one. You're all sitting on this side, so that works. Thank you. Appreciate it.
There you go. They both say that.
Okay. So one of the things that I want us to think about is the difference between leadership and management, right? So just a little group brainstorm on here. I'll just record your ideas down here. What kinds of things do you associate with leadership, or or you can start with management, whichever you want to start with. Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of a meme that I've always seen where it's explaining the differences between leadership and management, and management is a boss that is kind of behind his employees and just commanding them what to do, whereas leadership is in with the employees, interacting with them and doing work alongside them instead of just shouting commands. So it's much more collaborative and, in my opinion, it's a little abstract, but also it's more empathetic. Management is kind of cold and calculating and just purely about results and about inputs and outputs of what you need to get your job done, whereas leadership is about, I feel like, creating an experience with a group that is united behind a common goal.
Okay. Cool. Thanks, Addison. What other folks think? Don't let Addison steal your thunder. Go for it.
He always does.
He always does? What other ways can we think about this? What other ways do you imagine sort of management versus leadership? Or do you see them as the same?
No, I definitely
they're
don't.
not.
When I think of management, I think of like, I kind of think of more of, like you were saying, it's a boss telling you, it's pretty much a boss telling you what to do.
Okay.
There's always like somebody over them making sure that they're hitting their deadline and stuff. And they don't really care the way that they go about it, but usually with management, they'll do whatever it takes to finish that end result.
Okay.
Even if it's like destroying relationships and stuff and things like that. When it comes, I think of leadership as somebody that definitely is in the fire with them, like they're alongside. It's not just telling them what to do. It's kind of like an inspiration.
Maybe inspiring, right? You want to be along there with them. They make you want to do those things. Versus a manager is just like that person you look at and you just are saying things about, sometimes keeping them to yourself, right? Okay. Anything else about leadership versus management? Other kinds of ideas? We'll tease some of these things out through the course of today. Anything else though?
I guess like in a simple sense, management is telling someone like, here is a pathway to our victory, and then someone else is like, let's go through this door and do it together.
Okay. All right. Is it vision or visionary in some ways? Are leaders helping us to imagine things?
I think they should.
Okay.
Oftentimes they might fall short of that ideal, but leadership should be visionary. It should strive to break barriers, all of those great things that it's supposed to do.
What would be the opposite of something with vision if you were thinking about it? That's something. Could we also say, no, goal less. Yeah. Really, I'm thinking about soccer and the World Cup coming up. All right.
Just go left again.
Beautiful job.
Man, doesn't like that. If you're in management, you're doing something like that, you're not trying to change things. You're trying to, in some ways, maintain the status quo, right? You're just trying to make things work. You're trying to keep the ship afloat, as it were, right? All right. So this is John Cotter, right? He writes about leadership and he writes about management. He said, management is defined as, quote, the act, manner, or practice of managing, handling, supervision, or control, right? A lot of the things that came up here. So planning, budgeting, organizing, you need managers, right? Managers help run the show. They make it work. Developing policies, solving problems in some cases, right? Whereas you think about leaders as establishing a vision, you might think about them as engaged in risk-taking, right? Not unreasonable risk, but sort of thinking about something that may not have a clear sort of, right? You're trying to inspire people to get there, even if you don't quite make it, as Addison said. As motivating, implementing change, focus is on innovation, right? This is what effective leaders do. And so these are two important pieces of the puzzle, but they are somewhat different. So here's another thing for us to brainstorm. What do you look for? Carlos is here, right? Any other elected officers here? Yes, yes. Treasurer, right? And chaplain, recorder. You're taking furious notes today?
That's what we got the camera for.
Ah, I see, I see. He's going back. He's going to transcribe it. Okay.
His own words.
So, so what do you look for in a chapter leader, right? And don't just say Carlos, right? What do you look for in a chapter leader?
Confidence.
Okay. So you look for confidence. What does confidence tell you?
They're comfortable comfortable in the position,
Okay.
or comfortable with themselves, which I think is oftentimes necessary to be successful in certain positions, because you can't be unsure of yourself or your abilities when you are taking on leadership roles to a
Okay.
certain extent. I think everybody always experiences some extent of self-doubt, but at the end of the day, you still have to have the confidence in yourself that you're going to be able to get the job done.
Okay. So you look for someone who's confident. What else? What other kinds of qualities do you look for in someone who's going to be a chapter leader in this case? You voted, right? Didn't you vote for? Isn't that how it works? Right? So these people that you voted for, some of whom were here in the room, what were you looking for?
Responsibility.
Okay, people who are responsible. All right, so people who are confident, people who are responsible. What else?
People who are willing to take initiative.
Okay, willing to take
Take
initiative,
a step
right?
forward.
That would fall more on the leadership category side of things,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So we're not maintaining the status quo, but we're actually trying to sort of take the bull by its horns, as you know, so as it were. What else are you looking for?
Accountability.
Accountability. All right, someone who's going to say, who's going to own it.
Yeah.
You do it well, great.
Especially
You don't do it well,
Especially like owning up to your mistakes when you know you made a mistake. You're like, okay, I can do better than this next time.
right? Good. Yeah, you want accountable people. So the authors of the Leadership Challenge, that's part of this curriculum, right? The two authors, they interviewed 1,500 managers, so people that were in the field, in sort of business, industry, other places. And they said, what are the top 4 kinds of characteristics or traits that you want to see, or that people want to see in leaders? In no particular order. They want people who are honest, right? So who are ethical, but who are also honest. They want people who are competent. That matters. When you have somebody who's so terribly incompetent trying to run something, it does not go well. So honesty, competence, they wanted, or people sort of identified people who were forward-looking. They had a vision, right? They were thinking about the future, and they were inspired, right? These are the sort of survey says top 4 items, right? Okay. We talked about a number of those different things, right? Would you say that those are all things you're looking for in someone to run your chapter? Or would you add anything to that? Because you also said, right, you look for confidence. What else do you look for?
Good luck.
Good looks.
Like a poster child.
Okay, excellent. Good look now. What else are you looking for? Some of you are saying accountable, right? Accountability. What other ones am I not remembering? that people
The
are saying?
ability to research. Kind of that's what.
Responsible, the ability to research.
Kind of like taking up that responsibility. Because I mean that's kind of one of the big things about like kind of like running the chapter. It's not that you're not always going to have the answers, but you need to know. You need to know how to find the answers.
You do, right? Or you also need to be able to tell people, I don't have the answer, but I will follow up with you.
Yes.
Like, I don't have it right now, right?
Or even like allowing them to work with you to get that. Like I think that could be definitely part of the team. Like if we all don't know, then we should all work forward towards that.
You want someone who's collaborative, who's relatively easy to work with? Have you ever worked with someone who's not very collaborative?
Yes.
How awesome is that?
2 thumbs down.
2 thumbs down, right?
3.
Yeah, right? Like other things. Inclusive. Leaders are usually effective leaders are really good at including people into that conversation and inspiring them to want to become a part of it. Good leaders lead, but part of leading is also about listening, right? You've got to listen to people. You've got to pay attention to them. They need to feel like you are doing all of those things, right? That is a way to build an effective team. Okay, you've got copies of some of the sheets. what I want you to do for the next couple of minutes, there's a personal best exercise. It is probably one of the very first ones if you're looking at it. Let's see. It looks like this. Do you see this? Do you have this? If you don't, I have copies. Yes, we need one. Okay. Pass them on out. This it may be, I'm not sure if,
Ryan? It's 2 and 3 not doing that's what I did.
no, I'm doing, as I understand it, I'm doing sessions 2 and 3.
Yeah, I had him print out the wrong ones.
Okay,
That
all
is
right,
my
well,
fault.
good. I've got,
I've got the,
you're
I've got
good.
the next ones.
You're good, you're good.
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
So there's 2 and 3, not 3 and 4, right?
2 and 3.
Yeah.
We're doing 2 now. We'll take a little break and then we'll do 3. Okay.
We'll be
all
on
right.
in advance.
Thanks.
Didn't hurt.
So this is where I want you to think for a couple of minutes. Think back to a leadership experience that you had, right? It could be from any sort of facet of your life up to this point in time. And I want you to think in particular about one that went well, right? So we're not looking for failures in this case. We're looking for something that went well. And in this first little space, I want you to just jot down a few ideas about, right, how you handled it when problems came up, right, sort of following along here. The second part is things that you did in that position, right, that made it effective or that made you effective in that position. And then any kinds of lessons that you learned. So take a few minutes to fill this out individually, and then what we'll do is we'll share those out. And we'll use this as an opportunity to maybe get to know one another a little bit better too, right? In some ways, this sort of doubles as an icebreaker because you'll probably learn things, even though you spend a lot of time together, you might learn things about one another that you don't already know. Yeah?
What are the chances you got 4 or 5 pens on hand?
Got one.
I don't have 4 or 5. I
Ryan,
have
you got more in that bag?
1, maybe 2.
Pencils?
Does anybody else have extra ones?
I've got 3.
I've got a smattering of pencils and pens. You know what?
Got hearts on.
Look at that.
Hey,
1 pencil, 5 pens.
I'll take the pencil.
Okay? Pens, anybody else need anything? Good? Got one? Yeah. so I know you may not be fully finished. I'm gonna give you like one more minute. If you are on question 2 and you're sort of itemizing those steps, hold where you're at and move on to question 3. And sort of let's think about the big lessons or morals about leadership that you learned. Like write those down for what's left of time if you haven't gotten there yet. And then I'm just gonna ask for some people to share what kinds of experiences they had and sort of what they learned from those experiences. All right, so that minute's up, so if you're finishing, you can finish those final thoughts. Someone who has finished already, can you tell us about a time when you felt like you were a good leader, an effective leader? Just give us like a real brief, like the elevator version of that thing, right? We'll just kind of go around, offer a few people space to talk about that. Don't all jump at once. Yeah,
So for me, I picked my years as president of College Democrats. So I've been president of that organization since, I want to say spring of 2020.
Okay.
And we have not necessarily been able to thrive, but we've been able to remain on campus and remain a consistent organization that is able to host events and to bring something of value to the campus community that no other organization does, because we are the only outright political organization on campus that's left anymore. We outlasted Turning Point USA, College Republicans has failed, and they're no longer active on campus, but we're still around. And so I see that as a testament to the dedication of myself and to my members. And so I guess for the things that made that happen it was just delegation, because as a leader you can't do everything yourself, and if you try to do everything yourself you're going to get burned out. And I made that mistake the first couple of semesters that I was in that role.
Okay.
And another thing, you want me to go down my list of?
No, that's good. That's good for, because that'll give us a sense of what it was. I mean, you were also navigating a pandemic too, right? With the shutdown, if I'm sort of marking time, right? March of 2020, and then sort of everything that happened after that. Good. What other things have people been involved in where they felt like they were effective leaders? Yeah.
So I went to a military junior college before I came to JC called
Okay.
Marion Military Institute. So it was like my second year, and I was a squad leader. And during the training phase for like the new recruits of the freshman cadets, one of our first sergeant was out sick, and I happened to notice we were out in formation. None of the PSGs, which are a rank ahead of me, we're not going to take that spot. I'm like, y'all gonna take the first sergeant spot? Well, I guess I'm going to do it. And so that was also intramural day, and so I was really motivated that day, and I motivated that whole company, and we won every single intramural.
Wow. So you sort of stepped into that position, right? And somewhat sort of unexpectedly, right? And you were successful. Good. Cool. Any other ones? Yeah, Gavin.
So at our last football game, one of the Southerners took a fall in the stands and his head pretty hard, and it was he was not able to move. He was seizing up, and so I kind of watched this scenario happen, and everyone in the area rushed to help him. So I knew that I couldn't be at the head of this whole operation. I had no medical experience or anything, but I kind of went in and I played my part. His feet were through the bars, and so me and a friend worked together to get his feet through, and we had to take one of his shoes off, and then I got under his waist, and while everyone is kind of like discussing, we have to get this guy up, like I kind of just screamed out. I was like, everybody, like 1, 2, 3, and we all got him up, and I just kind of, like, it was this being a team member and then playing my part when I had to, because no one else was going to call it, and I kind of almost hesitated, but I had to put the confidence forward and get everyone on the same page so we could get him safe.
Cool. Can we get the code of that story? Is this person okay?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely
good.
recovered.
Good.
Absolutely fine.
Cool. Any other ones that people want to share? No, I stare at you long enough. I like silence.
I mean, I can go. Probably mine probably be taking up this role. It was something that I really wasn't taught very well. There was not really a transition for this position, so I was kind of just thrown out there. And I think something that like it's helped me, especially right now, is my ambition. Especially with like the visions I have and everything.
Okay.
I don't quit asking questions, so so that's kind of how I got here.
Okay.
It's like I keep asking questions and I'm learning as I go, and that's kind of where it goes into my last thing, where it says like, what would you say about your major lessons?
Yeah.
I never stop learning.
Yeah.
Like it's every day is a new thing. And
Yeah. I don't either.
So like it's kind of like one of those things of developing.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Other lessons from these experiences? One lesson is sometimes surviving, right? And continuing to do something is a win, right? Doesn't mean you're always growing, right? There are going to be times you're going to have growing pains and you might sort of stagnate a little bit, but just keeping everything going, right, can be a success in its own right. Any other big lessons that folks learned? Yeah.
You can do everything right and still fail. And that's kind of been a hallmark of our organizations, because just because we can build it doesn't mean people are necessarily going to come.
Yeah.
Because we're also existing at a time where everybody's bombarded in the political world. You're bombarded with negative news and just overall negativity from any side that you look at. A lot of things on the political spectrum. So some people are just really kind of burned out in politics.
Yeah.
And they don't want to get involved. But we're still creating a space where people can get involved and can engage productively in it, but whether that's connecting them to alumni who now work in, people like Raphael Lornick and John Ossoff's Senate campaigns. Our alumni will come back and talk about how you can prepare yourself in college to get jobs like that.
Yeah. Cool.
Just things like that.
Yeah. Nice. The thing that I want to transition to, right? And so the way this curriculum is built is it's designed to sort of start from where you're at in your own experiences and then sort of build out from there and give you a language to talk about these things and a sort of a structure and a framework to be able to work through them. So there are 5 practices of exemplary leadership, and these are sort of outlined in the Leadership Challenge. And the very first one of those is called challenging the process. So this connects to this brainstorm we had where we talked about leaders and leadership as being visionary and risk-taking, right, and not really maintaining the status quo. So on the back of that sheet that you were just writing, I want you to take 2 minutes, and I want you to make a list of all the practices that fit into the category, this is how we've always done it. So like in terms of the chapter, right, like, and you all have different levels of, like, some of you are like, I'm brand new. I don't, like Maui, right, who's like, I'm a candidate, I'm not, like, I don't know how we've always done it. But some of you have a fair amount of institutional knowledge, right? Some of you have been in the organization in the chapter for quite some time. So this is how we've always done it. Make a list of things that you do at the chapter because this is how we've always done it. Not necessarily because this is the best way, but just this is how we've always done it, so this is what we're going to do. Does that make sense? Anybody have questions about that? Is that like too meta? You're thinking about it because I think
Kind
you're
of.
like, yeah, I know some of these things. So like, we can think about it as traditions. You can think about it as ways of managing the chapter, the ways that you do certain things. You have a certain calendar of events that you do, things that frustrate you, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is just because this is how we do it, right? This is how it's been done for a long time. Maybe not necessarily the best way to do something. Does that make sense? Still trying to, okay, all right.
How many do you want us to write? Like 3 or 4?
Just, I mean, just any ones that come to mind, right? For some of you, it might just be 1 or none. For some of you, it might be 10, right? So it could be about the process. It could be about the rush process. It could be, right? I mean, you can sort of think about the whole range of things that the chapter does. And then we'll talk about those, right? So this is the first part. It's sort of identifying like these sorts of things, and then trying to figure out where we want to go, what kinds of changes you want to make. All right, so if you're still writing, you can keep writing. Tell me what some of these things are. What are some things that are done just because this is the way they've always been done, that you sort of jotted down?
We oftentimes try and find, I think, punishment for absence instead of positive reinforcement for those that go. Like, I think negative reinforcement is more common.
Okay. So is this in terms of you're keeping attendance of who attends certain events, and you've got to attend certain events and things like that, and then if you tend to focus more energy on the consequences for someone who doesn't go, rather than trying to inspire them to, they've missed a lot of meetings,
Absolutely.
how do we get them out to the next event?
Absolutely.
Okay. Good. What else? Carlos, you were going to say something.
I thought I don't know, I guess I was just thinking chapters every Sunday. Something that's consecutive that, I mean, I don't think I've ever heard of it being changed.
Okay. So you have meetings every Sunday?
Yeah.
Okay. Sundays in the evening or after evening?
Usually
Okay.
evening.
All
The
right.
times have been changed over time.
But it's always been a Sunday.
Evening.
All right. Okay. So we've got meeting dates or times, right? Just sort of always being the same. We've got sort of a focus on consequences for not attending. What else? I saw other people writing stuff down that you feel, I should say, right? This is supposed to be like a safe space to be able to share these things. So like, I hope it's all okay that everybody can, like, you can put forward a criticism of something, right? Or like an idea and not feel like you're, damaging anything. Addison, I saw you writing a lot. What are you
Yes.
writing?
Oh, I've got a lot. This is just kind of stuff that I've got these notes in other places, but you want me to go down the whole list?
No, just pick one.
Okay. So we kind of suffer from a lack of institutional knowledge because I came in the fall of 2020, my post class did, and so we had a lot of guys then that had been fraternity for 4 years. And so what happened before, it just didn't get communicated to us for one reason or another.
Yeah. So in part, it was dependent on people rather than sort of process.
Yes.
In that sense. So like our recorder, not to pick on the recorder, but like meeting minutes, right? That's why we keep meeting minutes. It seems tedious, I understand, but like the meeting minutes are the record of everything that's talked about and discussed, and that's what somebody who is in that position can go back and take a look at to be like, oh, they were having these conversations, or processes that are in place, right? Good. Anything else that people are like, that's just always the way that we've done it?
Most of our parties and social events are inside the house.
Okay, because that's just how it's always been
Right,
done?
it's just house.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Which of those things could you change? Or any of those things you could just, maybe those things probably aren't get rid ofable, right? But could you change those things? How many of you like having Sunday chapter meetings? Sunday evening chapter meetings? Some yes, some no.
It's better than doing it throughout the
It is
school.
better than doing it.
Throughout the week, because we tried it, I think we tried that once and it never did work, so.
Yeah? Easier for people that live on campus or around Jacksonville than people who don't, right? You don't all live in the house, is that correct? Okay. So, right, this is always a challenge when you're holding events and stuff like that, right? My students who commute from an hour away, it's just kind of like, really? Like, I have to come here now on Sunday afternoon and then spend all evening here and then go back just to turn around and do it again on Monday, right? Okay. So think about those things, right? And your sort of goal is to create a space, right? If Sunday meetings are just the way that it's always been and you could imagine something different, what's some way that you could change that? Or how could you find out if Sunday meetings are the best time to meet? Carlos, I'm looking at you, but this is true for anybody.
I mean, definitely, like, it's really just kind of like taking a whole chapter and everything, kind of discussing it throughout the chapter. Just because I know a lot of times, like, Sunday, I know, like, our chapters used to be like at 7 o'clock at night, and it was like, we would get out by like 9 or 10. So, like, it was just kind of like adjusting it little by little.
Uh-huh.
So, like, now chapters are at 5.
Okay.
You still were getting out Sunday afternoon late, like, you're getting out by like 7 or 8. You still have
Okay.
time to go watch a movie, have dinner before the school day starts
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Okay.
What would be the benefit of getting out when the sun is up? What would be the benefit of having
A lot of jobs on Sundays or like a lot of them, it's like will either close at 5 or close at like 6. So it's easy for somebody to leave, saying, hey, I can leave an hour early instead of having chapter like at 3 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon,
Uh-huh.
and then like not being able to.
What are the implications of having chapter in the morning?
Hold on, the application that Addison would not be here, that's
Yeah.
probably a big one. I have a hard time making it on my 8:15 this semester.
So these are things, right? These are things to discuss, right? I mean, if it's always been done that way, but it doesn't have to be done that way, put out a poll. And you could actually think about doing that every year, right? Depending on who the members are and stuff like that. Maybe schedules line up different ways, so like, right? That's an easy fix. And it might make it accessible for more members, right? Are there people who can't make it on Sunday nights?
I think that's the best turnout.
Okay.
Because when we have it, I think like I said, we tried it throughout the week, and we only had probably 6 people come. Because like Wednesday, like people have band and stuff.
Yeah.
Band almost practice every day.
And it's hard to set up time that works for everybody equally well, right? But like these are just things, right, that you can think about, right? And that one of the things that leadership is challenging you to do is to sort of say, are there things we can do better? And we're just doing them because that's the way they've always been done, right? So can we improve the process? All right. So now part 2, right, or exemplary trait number 2 is inspiring a shared vision. Leaders can't do things alone. We've talked about that already. And good leaders use we often. It's never I, or if it is I, that usually is a flag, right? Leaders build teams that are cohesive. They create teams that make people feel good about what they're doing. They feel valued. And it requires collaboration. It requires trust, right? All those things. So imagine you're 3 years into the future, right? The Chanticleer wants you to submit an article describing your chapter, who your members are, what your chapter does, what it looks like, etc. How would you respond? What would your article say? Right? Think about that. I'm not going to make you write this one down. We can just talk about this. But like 3 years into the future. So now we fast forwarded to 2025. It's fall of 2025. You're all somehow still students here. Kidding. What does this meeting look like when you're not here, when the next round of brothers comes through, right? What do you want it to look like? What do you envision that meeting looking like? Yeah.
I would want like the whole room to be filled.
Okay.
Like more, like double what we have now.
Okay. growing the membership. Okay. Cool. What else?
Definitely, like what Gavin was talking about with the positive, what was it, positive?
Reinforcement?
Yeah, positive reinforcement, because like, right now, when he talks about that negative reinforcement, it's kind of something that has been like, it's one of those things where you said that, like, you can change.
Yeah.
It's, that negative reinforcement has been the only thing that like, that we've been taking on for years and years. And
Okay.
the reason why, like, it's something that we do is because that's the only way that we see results. Because that positive reinforcement, it's been tried,
Okay.
and it didn't really go anywhere.
Alright.
There's always like, you can always make it better, and there's time and everything, but like, that's what I hope would eventually become where.
That
you
you're
don't have to be-
inspiring them to want to show up rather than basically instilling them with fear for not showing up,
Yeah.
right? Or threatening them with like whatever that process looks like. What else? So full room. What else? Or how, maybe to pull on something that Addison mentioned, right? How do you prevent a spring fall 2020 from happening again? Where you have all these people who graduate, right? All these brothers who graduate, and you've got a whole new group of people, and they're sitting there exactly where you were in spring and fall of 2020, just being like, what in the world are we doing?
So making sure that younger people are coming in instead of like, getting like older people. We need to kind of focus on our freshmen. Instead
Okay.
of, like, getting more seniors and stuff like that. Not helping out Chris, but
So you got to get more people in earlier, right? Do you have positions like, I know some organizations have like a junior board or something like that that's really geared towards first and second year students, and they give them they delegate different kinds of tasks for them so they get the experience of leadership, even though a lot of the sort of more senior leadership are typically juniors and seniors, not always, but.
That's the big thing that I think was the problem with that transition, is that we had really young guys who immediately went into very important leadership positions within the chapter, and they got burnt out on it because those first couple of years are typically the fun years where you do the smaller positions that you're learning from somebody who's above you, and you don't have as much of a workload, so you can still experience the more fun aspects and social aspects of the fraternity instead of the operational side of it. But what we had was a bunch of sophomores and in some instances, second semester freshmen who were crossing over as brothers after they were candidates, and immediately assumed either an EC position or another very important position within the chapter, and they just got too much work and not enough fun, and so those trade-offs didn't really work with them anymore.
Yeah.
Because they didn't see it as worth it to do all of this work and then to never get to do anything fun, which is a big draw for people with fraternity life is, we're gonna go have fun, and it's a social fraternity. I mean, that's one of the main goals, and one of the main aspects of fraternal life. And so that's really the big thing, is just getting consistent recruitment numbers to where we can put people in the right positions and help them identify what position they want to go for, where they would possibly enjoy. Because hypothetically, everybody should be able to take over whatever position. If somebody has to leave, it's just next man up, and then they assume the role and they can continue on in the position. But we didn't have a lot of people who were taking not necessarily baby steps, but just stepping stones to where they would.
They just got thrown into executive
Exactly.
council roles or whatever without having any other experience doing it.
Yes, it's like they were going from first to seventh.
How many members do you have?
16 right now.
16? Okay. Okay. So you want a fuller room. Maybe you want better transition so that they're not losing steam by trying to recreate things, but they've got things in working order, right? What do you want them to do that you're not doing right now? What do you envision them doing?
On a less concrete scale, I'd like some more energy in the room. There's a lot of it feels really like going through the motions sometimes. It feels really like, okay, we're here, let's do this, we can get out of here and go home.
Okay.
It feels like everybody's got something to say and then we're gonna be done, whatever.
Okay. So how do you make it feel more dynamic?
Yeah, I'd like to have brainstorm sessions with the fraternity. I think it would be a really cool idea to have people present some random crazy stupid idea that they have and then find a way to implement it in the chapter somehow and make it really work and make us look better, because Everybody's got their own ideas. We can't just have like just our reports and then go home.
Okay.
If I don't hear from you, then why are you here?
All right. Is everybody listening?
Yes.
Right? Like these are things that we're not going to do tonight, but like these are things you can absolutely do, right? Because you are the group. You get to dictate how things go. Nobody's going to push you from outside, right? So you make it what you want to make it. And that's the power of like an exercise like this, right? It allows you space to talk about some of these things, and then it gives you opportunities, but then you're responsible for taking those opportunities and doing something with them, right? So there are some really good ideas, right, that are being generated. So think about those things, right? Let me talk about the third one. And part of these, right, I can relate to these because I helped to start a student organization here at JSU, and it has had a number of sort of growing pains along the way too, right? And I have lots of conversations where I'm trying to get the officers, I'm like, it's your organization, I'm your faculty advisor, I'm happy to sort of bounce ideas, but like, what is the vision? Like, where do you want this thing to go so that it doesn't get kind of stuck, right? This is true for any organization. So it's not just Sigma Nu, right? It's true for any. Organizations have to evolve. They've got to be dynamic, they've got to be responsive, and they've got to continue to push. Otherwise, you are just kind of checking boxes like, this is what we've always done, so this is what we're going to do this year. But then it can grow kind of stale, right? So enabling others to act. I mentioned this. Leaders can't do things alone. They use we often. So think about, well, this may not work so well, right? It says like, think about 2 or 3 members in your chapter who have a lot of potential but who are often overlooked. We have most of the chapter represented here, right? If you want to, you can think about it. Like, write down their names. If you feel comfortable enough with one another, you could actually say like, hey, I think this person is great, but they haven't taken any leadership roles yet. How do we encourage this person to take a leadership role? You got a name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I say it?
Yeah.
Evan Waters.
Okay.
He's just showed a lot of leadership skills ever since he crossed over. And we tried getting him on YouTube, just with his schedule and everything.
Uh-huh.
But he's one of the persons I definitely would look into, especially after me and Addison are gone. Taking
Okay.
up an EC position because it would definitely make a drastic change in that.
I've seen a lot of yeses. How do you feel, Evan, who has decided to be sort of largely quiet throughout the meeting tonight? How does it feel to hear that?
It's good, but I think I had a like Rose said.
Okay.
I would love to do something like a leadership position.
Okay. All right.
Noah also falls in that boat.
Okay.
He's been here several years, or maybe a year. But
Okay.
I mean, his leadership skills have also showed. And like, I definitely, whenever it's my time to go, I definitely would want to see him in a leadership position.
Cool. How do you feel about that? No. All right. You're Noah, right? Okay. How do you feel about that?
Sure.
Sure.
You're wrong.
Okay. I'm saying that not to put you on the spot, but to think about that, right? People see things. Sometimes it takes somebody else seeing something in us for us to really realize that we are capable of doing things, right? That may or may not be the case, but just sometimes hearing that can be nice, right? So think about it, right? You have people, anybody else who's here or who's not here? No? Any other people who you haven't recruited yet, but you're thinking about, like outside of the fraternity? Yeah.
So like, in a less specific sense, I'd like to see the leadership qualities of the collegiate members that are not exactly in such special positions and do not exactly have all of the qualifications, but maybe 1 or 2 of them. I'd like to see those leadership qualities shine in those important moments and have like major participation when they can. Because you can't take on the whole workload.
Right.
But as long as you're like playing your part, it'll help the whole team. It'll really help the whole team.
Okay. Do you have those kinds of positions? Does the organization have those kinds of positions available already? in sort of less structured format. So some of you are, I mean, you have what, I counted 5 or 6 different officer positions already?
We have a chair position also. So, I mean, yeah, so what it is like you have the EC of 7 people.
Okay.
And then they have little chairs under them that do.
Like sub sort of committees or something like that, or, okay. So part of it is enabling others to act. This is myself speaking, having also tried to organize groups of people and stuff like that, right? I end up being a person who takes on a lot, right? And it's always hard to bring in more people, right? You always want, you can think about leadership as happening like, or involvement in an organization is happening in like these circles. You've got the core nucleus of people that do the bulk of the work. You've got like the next ring out, right? So you can think about them as rings of people who are engaged, but they're not really taking on leadership roles and stuff like that. And then you have that other big circle out here of people that just show up from time to time at events, right? But don't do that kind of stuff. And I think the idea is you always want to be broadening out that inner circle. So you've got more people who are more heavily invested, right? How do you do that? Part of that is inspiring people. Part of it is creating the structures in which people can thrive, right? The fourth one is modeling the way, right? This one you can do easily. Think of a role model. Think of someone who's a role model for you. Think about why you admire or respect them. And then if you're willing, you can share that out to the group. Who is a role model, right? It can be in this room, doesn't have to be in this room, right? Anything. And why you admire them. Yeah.
For mine, it's my dad.
Okay.
Because like he's always been like, he's been up in like higher up positions for like his whole life pretty much, and he's taught me like how to be a leader and everything like that, to kind of get into those higher positions where like I work and stuff like that. And he's just always been the sole provider of my family, so like it's kind of hard to see how he can manage that and what he does. So.
Okay. Cool. So he's able to balance a lot. He's present. He's there. Cool. Other role models that you think of? Yeah, go ahead.
Mine is well my mom, just because she comes from a history, she comes from Mexico, so she's undocumented. Coming to the United States is not the easiest thing being undocumented. You don't get the privilege of getting to go to McDonald's and getting an application and starting a job there. Like, she doesn't have any kind of tax ID, she doesn't have anything.
Yeah.
She still pays taxes.
After all that.
And raised you.
Yeah, 4 of us.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Wow.
Very inspired.
Cool. That's great. And I bet she enjoys seeing where you're gesturing to that already. So I've been kind of trying to include that in there. So we can do either of those two things. We can either, I can just sort of throw it in really quickly towards the end, and then I can leave it for you all to go and do. Or we can just stop when we get to the end of 2.
I would do the first one, just kind of like give us an idea of what.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can take that one.
Okay. The last one, right, is, and this other part, this is really the end of this first session here, is what they call encouraging the heart, right? This is where you let people know that they feel that they're valued, right? And it's not just the one-off. They give this example in the instructor thing where somebody like worked really hard, and at the end, like the squad leader or something is like, oh yeah, we have certificates up here, so just come and get these on your way out. Where you don't actually stop, pause, and acknowledge the people's work and do it sort of in a public way. It's just like, oh yeah, here, take this thing on your way out, right? You've earned this certificate or whatever. And so they emphasize things like handwritten notes, right? In this age of electronic communications and stuff like that, it's really nice to get a note, like an actual note.
It takes effort.
What's that?
It takes effort.
It takes effort, right? You know, small gestures, right? Letting people know that you appreciate them. One of the best things that you can do, and this is just me having gone through leadership training and stuff in the past, we had, in the training that I went through, it lasted about a year, we had these like deposits. And it was basically like this box where we were in this group of people together going through this leadership training, and we would basically just fill out somebody's name when you saw them doing something that was really awesome and inspiring or whatever, you just saw them doing something, You'd write their name, you'd drop it in the box, and then every now and again they would take it out and they would just distribute those to everybody. And the idea was that you're making deposits because you're acknowledging other people. And the idea was you wanted to make more deposits than you ever got back, right? So it's really about giving, but that creates a culture where like everybody was doing it all the time, right? And in some ways it's like you're filling that up. And I think that's another way to think about that, right? When people do something and they work really hard, it's really nice for them to hear it, like not as a passing thanks, right? So Carlos, as president, if he organizes something, right, goes really well, you know he spends a lot of time on it, like, it's nice to just like appreciate him for it, right? Whether it's through a handwritten note or something like that, or that goes for anybody else who's in these roles. That creates investment, that creates buy-in, that's what works, right? That then parallels with enabling others to act, modeling the way, right? It sort of all links up together. Okay. Do you want a 5-minute break for bathroom or whatever, and then come back and we'll finish? Section 3? All right, stretch, get up. And all I'm going to do is give you most of the tools, right? We're not going to go super late. Is I want to give you the tools to be able to meet and sort of talk through some of these ideas and to start working on a vision for the organization, right? So hopefully tonight gets you thinking about that. And hopefully in the months to come, right, you can figure out how to put together a really sort of a vision that works for most everybody, right? Whether that's growing the membership, setting these things in motion, and really starting to come up with the overarching sort of goal, if you will, or the vision for what it's going to look like. Once you have the vision, then you can go back up and set goals, right? And that's the way that you can start sort of working through that. This is a visionary or a vision audit. It's just a series of yes/no questions, right? Answer them to the best of your knowledge. I know, again, all of you are not in the same place in terms of your knowledge of the organization or the chapter. Just take one and pass those down the rows. This is kind of like a needs assessment in some ways, right? You're kind of assessing where the chapter is at. I think that's one. You may have copies of this, I don't know, in that. Also, for those who are out, I left on your desk some concrete steps, this one right here, for thinking about those 5 different leadership practices, right? So everybody's got a copy of those.
Thank you, sir. Here you go. All right. Does everybody have time to finish? Almost? Give me like a thumbs up if you're good. Thumbs, thumbs. Question, I think, is like, what is vision, right? So that's what I want to pose, right? What is vision?
what is not vision, I guess, right? So like, what is vision? What does it mean to be visionary?
Kind of what I said earlier, there's not an end to it.
Okay.
That's kind of like when I think about vision and goal, two different things. Like when you have a goal, you're shooting for something and then you're gonna stop there.
And you
With
get to it and you meet it.
And with a vision, it's something that you can continue and then pass on, and they can alter it the way that they want to continue.
Right.
It doesn't ever stop.
That's a really good definition. A vision is an ideal. The whole thing about ideals, what makes them so powerful, is that you never attain the ideal. You're always striving, right? That's the idea of vision, right? It inspires people to action. It shapes the future. It shapes the people who are in your organization, right, to move it forward. A guy who wrote a book on visionary leadership says there's no more powerful engine driving an organization towards long-term excellence and success than an attractive, worthwhile, achievable vision of the future, right? It is the ideal state of an organization, right? A more desirable future. It is not, right? Feel-good words, right? Catchphrases, words, and stuff like that make you feel good. It's not a mission statement, right? Those are two different things, right? So your chapter has a mission statement. It's not that. A mission is sort of a statement of core principles. A vision imagines how you will fulfill that mission, right? It's not goals or strategic planning, as Carlos mentioned, right? Those are also part of the process, but it's not fully a vision, right? So this is kind of where I think I want to leave you. They had some fun things in here with like Tinker Toys and stuff. I was like, no, you don't need to do that, right? Because I saw this largely as I went through it. I saw it kind of as a work session, right? It's really meant to be something that's useful and practical for you, so I tried to trim off some of the excess, right, and really just make it helpful. This is a vision worksheet. This is that idea where I said, what is your vision for the organization? Spend some time answering this. You don't have to do it tonight, right? I'm going to leave it up to the executive council, right, to sort of figure out how they want you to do this. But this asks you a series of questions that it really would be good to spend some time thinking about. All right? Again, it doesn't have to be tonight. But what is your vision? What would you personally like to see it be? My recommendation is take this information, schedule a time to sit down and talk through them. What are your answers to the question? Where do your answers sort of synergize with the answers of other brothers, right? Because when you get to that point, that's how you start getting somewhere. That's where you know you're identifying the same things. You can use this audit too. You will probably find that you answered yes to a lot of the same questions, right? And if you start to see those things come up, that's really where you want to focus your efforts for vision, right? So this is something for you to take with you, this vision worksheet and your vision for the organization. And this is a good sort of starting point for discussion, right? I'm going to start these here and just let you sort of pass these back, all right? Had we had longer, I would have had you do it individually. We would have come in pairs, sort of talk about it a little bit, right? But we don't. We do need to wrap up. And the other way that you can also think about doing this, if you need some other prompts, is thinking about how you would answer these questions. How would you fill in the blanks to these questions? A good member is one who, right, does what? What does a good member look like? You can also think about it as it is important that our chapter fill in that blank, right? The greatest legacy that I can leave, these are some other ways you can get at some of those questions, right? What is the greatest legacy that I can leave the chapter when I graduate, right? How do you want to leave this thing? And that's the really interesting thing about student organizations, as they exist before you get here in most cases, and they will outlive you as a student at JSU, I hope, right? That is the hope anyway. So how do you contribute to this organization and make it better than when you first arrived, right? What do you do to make that better for all your incoming brothers, the people who are going to be here, years down the road when you are gone? And so this is part of creating a vision for the chapter. I don't know if you have a copy of this, but I will give this to you too. What we did here today was step 1 in this abbreviated session, right? There are 6 total steps if you really want to work together to implement a vision for the chapter. And this sort of lays them out for you, right? The second step, a chapter retreat. Completing that vision worksheet, having real conversations about what you want to do, and then starting to write the vision statement, edit that statement, and start creating a plan after that for how you want to achieve that vision, right? How do you make this the best iteration of itself you can, right? And that's really what these 2 sessions were meant to do, to give you the language and framework to think about it, and to give you the tools to really start sort of turning it into what you know it can be, the best version of itself, all right? So I will give you these, you can pass these out, and ultimately that's where I'm going to leave it, right? We're at 7:29 in 26 seconds, right? So I hope this is helpful. I hope it didn't feel too much like class. I feel like I've been doing this all day. I quite literally have. I started at 8:45 this morning, right? I want to go home. But I do hope it's helpful. These kinds of things do matter. It's given me a lot to think about for the student organization that I advise as well. And a couple of you are in that one.
You'll see Addison again whenever we do the Pound Howard.
Yep, that's right.
You'll see me tomorrow too.
I will.
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock. And if y'all have questions or whatever, you're welcome to ask me. I have some personal experience with stuff like this too, apart from the curriculum. And so anyway, so thanks again for inviting me, Gavin. And
Thank you so much.
Yeah, y'all be well. Man, if only that happened at the end of every class I taught, right?